Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with our discussion, our journey, with regard to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2021. And that brings us to the title, which has been designated by Criterion at spy number 1072. This is a film from 1937. The director is Frank Borzage, and the name of the film is History is Made at Night. From 1937. The director is Frank Borzage and produced by Walter Wanger, and it stars, among others, in its really lovely cast, Charles Boyer and Jean Arthur, and they play Paul and Irene respectively in this work, which is called History is Made at Night. And my goodness, what a splendid entertainment this is. It is a story about Irene, the Jean Arthur character, and her current situation with respect to the relationship that she is in with the Colin Clive character. And we see almost immediately that she is in a state of unhappiness due to certain situations and reasons in the context of that relationship. So we have the setup of the character arc development of her character. At the same time, or immediately thereafter, we get to know the character of Paul, the Charles Boyer character, and how these two characters meet and what their relationship is and how it develops over the time and course of this particular work. And we see this relationship, the Charles Boyer character and the Jean Arthur character, their relationship being the focal point or the emotional core of the film that propels the film forward, that drives it, and that is a source of, or is otherwise entangled by, various moments of dramatic tension in the context of this essentially love triangle that ensues or develops over the course of the narrative. And along the way, we get to know these characters, we get to see their interactions, we get to sense and feel and engage with, as viewers of the film, the development of their relationship and their romance, and indeed the on-screen chemistry that exists between these two characters, and indeed between these two performers, Charles Boyer and Jean Arthur. Really, all these elements are incredibly well presented, and they form this tableau or backdrop wherein the various, say, plot strands or subplots or various levels of narrative story are permitted or allowed to develop. And what are these various strands or levels or subplots or developments? They involve, for instance, a type of globe-trotting nature. There are many areas of the world that are the backdrop of the settings or the environments, and so we see the characters in one part or in another part, and there's a sense of a type of epic nature in terms of the movements of these characters. We also get a sense of a romantic comedy. There are a lot of comic aspects to this film, and they involve the characters, the main characters, and also the other characters as well. And I mentioned romance, and this is also a very well presented romance tale. It is a romance drama that is driven, as I was suggesting earlier, by the existence of this particular core relationship between Paul and Irene, Charles Boyer's character and Jean Arthur's character. There are also elements or hints or undercurrents of the thriller There's a sense of unease and danger and menace that are presented, in particular in the way that the Colin Clive character inhabits the story and interacts with the various people in this particular story. And indeed, in the context of that thriller or menacing element, there can also be connections with, say, a film noir type of suggestion. Indeed, in one of the supplements of this Criterion release, Peter Cowie mentions how there is an element of a film noir development in the certain aspects of the plot, and so I think that's very well taken, and that's suggestive of one of the many ways in which this film inhabits various genres. There's also the epic nature of the film. I was suggesting earlier how this has a type of globe-trotting aspect to it, while at the same time exhibiting or embodying a sense of the intimate and emotional romance tale, a drama or melodrama type of tale. There's also the epic nature of it, and it has a breadth of scope that is quite astonishing. And that breadth of scope extends into genres or presentations that could also be described as being epic, tragic, and there's also hints of, or maybe not just hints, but very strong helpings of the disaster film in the context of the specific developments and how the film starts and how the film reaches its very exciting and suspenseful conclusion. So there are all these elements: the thriller, suspense, film noir, disaster, as well as being a type of epic film that has a tragic scope to it, that also has a romantic scope to it, that also is a comedy, and there's also a human drama or melodrama. So it does inhabit, or does wear, many hats as a cinematic work, so to speak. But that's also one of the strengths and one of the real charming points of appeal when one is engaging and watching this film. And it is embodied in this great entertainment that I think is really strengthened by a number of factors. There's, of course, the way that this material and the imagery is presented to us through the presentation of the work under the direction of Frank Borzage, and I'll get to some specifics of the style and aspect of Frank Borzage's work in the context of Histories Made at Night, because one of the discussions in the Criterion Collection supplements really goes into some lovely detail as to the hallmarks, if you will, or stylistic trademarks and points of artistic creativity that really strengthen the vision of Frank Borzage in this and in other films. So there is the strength of vision and direction there, and there are also the great character portrayals and the performances. In particular, the main duo, as it were, between the Jean Arthur character and the Charboyer character, and their chemistry is really lovely. There are moments when these characters are given room to express their innermost feelings. There are some moments of real heartfelt sensitivity and almost sad elements of tragedy that are balanced by moments of, say, triumph or success, or indeed love and romance, but those are also tested. So in this sense of balance, there's also the sense of suspense as to whether or not the protagonists will indeed succeed in the particular situations that they find themselves in. And so this is all given a great sense of perspective and presentation when we think about these wonderful performances, and in particular the Charboyer and Jean Arthur performances and the characters that they're portraying. So these, I think, are great strengths that further augment or support or otherwise enhance the overall presentation package that is this film History is Made at Night. And indeed it is a type of package, because as I was trying to suggest earlier, this film has been described as being many types of genre expressed in a very energetic way, almost all at once. And I think that's one of the great things about it. There's also a sense of how it's well paced between and among these various genre tones, as it were. And so there is a great sense of gathering of various types of genre entertainment, not just the gathering of such genre entertainments, but also the way in which those various points are balanced. And there is a sense of a visual flair and style. And then there's also a sense of the character portraits that really help to anchor the proceedings in a way that gives an emotional weight, and the means by which we as viewers can access the world and really invest our own feelings and our own commitments to the concerns of these particular characters, and will they or won't they succeed in their particular situations. And so this is, I think, a great entertainment that is another indication of the type of creative mind and the true high-level artistic craft of Frank Borzage with this type of romance entertainment that is many things at once. This is the very brilliant film, which is called History is Made at Night. The Criterion Collection release is this Blu-ray, which is right here, and it is purported to be based on a 4K digital restoration with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. And I must say that it really looks and sounds quite splendid. There is also, in addition, and I will mention it a little bit later, there is also, in addition, as part of the supplement materials included in this release, there is a restoration demonstration which really serves to illustrate the current elements, and also how this new version or this new Blu-ray release serves to further enhance and support the legacy of this film and the legacy of the cinema of Frank Borzage writ large. So it's a wonderful presentation, so please check it out if you can. But that's not all, because as with every other or many other Criterion releases, this release also has accompanying it a number of supplements. And they are all, each in their own way, very fascinating and very valuable, I would suggest. The first of such supplements is a discussion, a lovely discussion between Peter Cowie and Hervé Dumont. And Hervé Dumont is an expert in the life and times and films of Frank Borzage. And in fact, he is the author of Frank Borzage, The Life and Films of a Hollywood Romantic. And this is a beautiful, brilliant discussion between these two gentlemen. Peter Cowie asks a number of questions and makes a number of his own observations about the works of Frank Borzage, and specifically about this film, History is Made at Night. And Hervé Dumont provides his own insights and his own knowledge and information about the life and times of Frank Borzage, and leading up to this film, and then focusing in on a discussion of this film and using this film as a type of example as to how Frank Borzage is really a wonderful artist in terms of the cinematic craft and the types of tools and stylistic devices that he employs in this and in other films. So in that context, this is a brilliant discussion. This is described as being from 2018 and approximately 23 minutes. And if I could give a few examples as to why I think this is a brilliant discussion. For example, the setup is really quite good. Not good, it's excellent in that Dumont provides us with a little bit of background as to the trajectory of Frank Borzage's career leading up to History is Made at Night, and speaking a bit about Frank Borzage's career in the early 1930s, and specifically 1933 to 1934 with films like Man's Castle and No Greater Glory and Little Man What Now, and then what happened in terms of his career a little bit after that, but before this film, History's Made at Night, and the circumstances involving Wanger and this film, and what occurred in terms of the pre-production details, but also the production details of this film. Because one of the fascinating things about the making of this film that is revealed in this discussion is the fact that a lot was essentially improvised or made up even after the production began on this film. And so there were a lot of things, a lot of plot points, a lot of major significant plot points, in fact, according to this discussion. A lot of major plot points were made up and were improvised to a certain extent in order to essentially form a lot of the structure on the spot. And so that type of last-minute planning or last-minute creativity, I think, is one of the things that these two gentlemen cite as being an indication of the creative genius of Frank Borzage, the fact that he was able to fashion or forge a lot of the very significant plot elements in a way that is very creative and very satisfying in terms of overall viewing experience of the final product of the film. So that's one thing that's really fascinating, and that also gives us insight into the making of this film itself, and also an indication or example of Frank Borzage's artistic type of approach. Another thing that is mentioned in this discussion is that Dumont reminds us that Frank Borzage was also, or earlier in his career, he was also an actor, and so this is suggesting the point that Frank Borzage, as a director and as a filmmaker, tended to have a certain way in which he would want to work with the actors and performers on the sets of the various film projects. And so there was this way in which Dumont describes Frank Borzage's manner, and there's a sense of calm or serenity in terms of the filmmaking process. There are also moments, for instance, certain key character moments would be dealt with by Borzage in a very intimate fashion. Dumont cites examples, say in History's Made at Night. There's a very famous intimate scene early on involving a dance between the Charles Boyer character and the Jean Arthur character, and how Dumont describes the production of this particular moment as being one where Borzage insisted on having as minimal crew as possible in order to, as I say, maintain a sense of the intimacy within the environment of the particular production as that scene was being made. So that is an indication of the way in which Borzage wanted to work with the performers and actors of each film. This be an example, and how this is how he placed great emphasis on this type of, say, environment or setting. And also the certain visual styles or visual cues or stylistic devices are also mentioned here. Peter Cowie and Dumont talk about, for example, the use of close-ups, and how there is a type of artistic beauty and grace and perfection, in the close-ups that are used. There's an enhancement of the intimacy. And if particular, going back to this very famous scene example of the dance between Jean Arthur's character and Charles Boyer's character. So there's the way in which Frank Borzage's close-ups are so beautifully constructed. And indeed, in a separate supplement, Farron Smith-Nemi has a discussion wherein she also cites the framing of particular close-ups as being one of the great strengths of Frank Borzage's filmmaking style. So this is a really lovely, I think, example of the Frank Borzage cinematic style, as it were. And also, speaking of that style, Hervé Dumont also mentions the interactive approach that Frank Borzage had even in the editing process, and so there are ways in which he was involved heavily in that, and that shows through and that shines through in a lot of the very key sequences of the film. So that, I think, is wonderful. Also, another example as to why I think this discussion is brilliant is Peter Cowie and Hervé Dumont talk about how, for example, the Charles Boyer and Jean Arthur were they had a certain type of reputation in terms of the films that they were appearing in around this time up to History's Made at Night. And so they're talking about the types of roles that they tended to be in. Jean Arthur, for instance, tended to be in these types of, according to these gentlemen, these types of maybe a wisecrack type of dialogue, snappy dialogue types of characters, and how this character of Irene in this film, History is Made at Night, shows a different side of Jean Arthur's acting prowess and ability, and how there are moments in this film, for example, where she is very vulnerable and very sensitive, and she shows a type of emotional depth and honesty. And that engagement is further enhanced or augmented by the fact that that emotional honesty is really brought to the fore when the main characters, this couple, are together on screen. And speaking of this couple, the other side of the coin, of course, is the Charboyer character, Paul, and how Charboyer was also in certain types of roles, and maybe some roles that he was famous for before and afterwards might have been of a different type of characterization, not necessarily the antagonist, as it were, where here he is given a real emotionally complex role, and he is allowed in many scenes to almost shout from the depths of his soul, as it were, in a way that he is very much a romantic type of hero, that he is also a wanderer, that he's also unsure, and that he also has his own sets of vulnerabilities that are presented in this brilliant way. And so this is another example of where I think the what Dumont describes here and elsewhere as a type of maybe Frank Borzage touch, as it were, how this is really shining through in the way that Borzage is dealing with, working with his actors and performers, and also allowing them to give us their great performances. And that is indeed the case, I think, with these performances here. And I should say also that there are some moments where these gentlemen talk about how the film is very clever in how it's presenting romance and intimacy, and how it's also presenting or maybe making some somewhat risque situations, but making them in a suggestive way that is very artistic, and perhaps withholding information directly, but in suggesting something of the level of intimacy, shall we say, with regard to these two characters. And so there's a real cleverness in the way that Frank Borzage is withholding information, but also presenting information at the same time. And so for these and other reasons, I think that this conversation between Hervé Dumont and Peter Cowie is one that I recommend wholeheartedly. Once again, this is the conversation that was, according to the Criterion Collection, recorded in 2018 and approximately 23 minutes. And then continuing on with the supplements, there is also the supplement which is Farren Smith-Nemi. And I mentioned it earlier. This is a one-on-one discussion that she provides. And it's a brilliant analysis. And this is described as being from 2019, approximately 13 minutes. And it's also described, I understand this is something that was shown for the Criterion channel. And this is a lovely supplement to the earlier discussion between Hervé Dumont and Peter Cowie, because Farren Smith-Nemi goes into a type of analysis or breakdown or an overview of the career or the filmography, I should say, of Frank Borzage, and she cites a number of different films for purposes of showing to us or suggesting to us a sense of the Frank Borzage style. She makes, as always, she makes so many great, insightful points. For example, she mentions the fact that the Frank Borzage films are perhaps well known for the fact that he liked to deal with romantic stories, romances, romantic dramas, and indeed that's the case. But what she also says, which is so insightful, is at the same time, while Frank Borzage is interested or concerned with telling these very romantic stories, he is also engage with telling the other side of that, which is the dark side of human nature. Where there is a light side, there is also a dark side. And so this type of duality is, according to Ferenc Smith-Nemi, inherent in the Frank Borzage style, at least in the thematic concerns and the types of stories that he told throughout his grand filmography. And so this is, I think, and when I think about this comment that she makes, it's a brilliant comment, and it makes me, or reminds me of that type of, say, duality, if you will, that exists, the romantic side and also the very dark and menacing side that are existing simultaneously in a film like History is Made at Night. So this is a great, and that's not all, because Ferenc Smith-Nemi goes on to talk about the style, the visual style and flair. She also makes mention of the beauty of composition of shot, in particular the close-up. She uses, I think, as an example, shots of, or examples from No Greater Glory or Man's Castle, in terms of the way in which symmetry and composition in visual terms is achieved with great artistry, and also the types of concerns in terms of character arcs that we see in a lot of these films, and also visual cues that are linked emotionally as well. She also cites the film A Farewell to Arms from 1932, and how there are certain moments where there are some great visual techniques that are indicative, or that are linked to the emotional states of the characters at that particular point in time in the film. And so this is, I think, a great way to approach the filmography of Frank Borzage. And speaking of A Farewell to Arms, she also speaks a little bit about how Ernest Hemingway felt about that particular film adaptation of the Hemingway novel, but how Frank Borzage insisted, or still believed, that it was, according to Ferenc Smith-Nemi, his best work. And so it's an interesting anecdote from Ferenc Smith-Nemi. There is some information, or there's some commentary or discussion about some key aspects of that particular film, A Farewell to Arms, in particular something to do with, say, the ending or the climax of the film. So that information is revealed. So if you are interested in this discussion, I strongly suggest that you check it out. And if possible, please, if you haven't seen A Farewell to Arms, if you don't know the story, there are some key moments of that film and story that are revealed in this discussion. So just bear that in mind when you decide to watch this particular discussion. I think, in conclusion, the Ferenc Smith-Nemi talk is a great type of discussion of Frank Borzage. There is Frank Borzage films discussion, not necessarily about History is Made at Night, which we saw in the earlier supplement, but it is about, say, the other films around this particular time, and this further solidifies or makes evident the Frank Borzage style, the cinematic style, and the traits of that particular style. And the great insights that she provides, as she always does, are well worth it. So please check it out if you can. This is, again, approximately 13 minutes, the discussion with Ferenc Smith-Nemi. And then that's not all, because we get next an audio interview, or what's described as being excerpts from an audio interview that was given, that George Pratt conducted with Frank Borzage himself in 1958. And so this is a great audio interview, because, of course, we're getting to hear from Frank Borzage himself. There are some really great specific anecdotes that he gives about his beginnings, or his early start, as it were, as a filmmaker, and certain anecdotes about what he learned about editing, and those lessons that he learned early on about coverage, and how that taught him some key points about editing that we can assume he applied later on. This reminds me of the emphasis that was placed on the Frank Borzage style in editing that we saw in the Dumont Cowie interview as the first supplement here. So that's a great little anecdote to have in terms of editing and coverage that he learned early on. And then we get some great insights from Borzage directly about working with actors, working with performers, and specifically, speaking of A Farewell to Arms, this brings in a discussion about Helen Hayes and Gary Cooper and others. And so this is so valuable. It is absolutely top notch. And so if you have the opportunity, please check it out. It is audio, but I hope that is okay with you. It is so worth it, absolutely worth it, because we're getting to hear directly from the artist himself, and that is very valuable. And as I say, the anecdotes and the specific bits of information that he provides are so charming, and also so I think representative of the type of artist and also the type of person that he was. And so please check it out if you can. This is the audio interview conducted according to the Criterion Collection in 1958. And this overall supplement is approximately 30 minutes. And that's not all, because we get, as I referred to earlier, a restoration demonstration. Now, this is approximately 8 minutes. And what this shows or illustrates is the condition of the elements that were currently existing that were existing prior to the restoration itself, and then the comparison in terms of those existing materials or pre-existing materials versus what the process was and the end result of this particular restoration. So this is always this is a reminder, a great reminder of the type of work and care that is involved and that is necessary for restorations like this. So it's very illustrative and worth checking out if you can. Approximately 8 minutes. And that's not all, because the supplements are rounded out by Screen Guild Theatre radio adaptation from 1940. It's described as being from November 10th, 1940. This is approximately 27 minutes. And this features Charles Boyer. It also features Greer Garson. And so we have the radio theater play of this story, History is Made at Night. And so it's lovely, absolutely charming, and the story is well told. It's exciting. These radio adaptations are so much fun, and this is another great example of that. So please check it out if you haven't already. So this is from 1940, and it's approximately 27 minutes. So that is the roundup, if you will, or that's an overview of the Criterion presentation as we see it here. But that's not all, because, of course, as with the physical media releases, we have the actual case and the front and back itself. There's this very interesting tableau of characters and stuff that's going on, and perhaps in many ways, this is a great visual representation of the multi-leveled nature, or the multi-genre nature, if you will, of this particular film. And so we get a lot of elements that are featured, I think, quite cleverly here, and it's carried through in this, which is the insert. It's a fold-out. So I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. The fold-outs I'm not the biggest fan of, if I had to be perfectly honest, but still, it is nice to see the artistic theme carried through in this lovely use of color and design. Let me say that the art directors are credited as being Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, illustration Abigail Giuseppe, designer Katya Mejibovskaya. So, and the essay is called "Taking a Chance on Love" by Dan Callahan, and it's another great, wonderful essay. I recommend reading this and the other essays, ideally after you have seen the film, So once you've seen the film, you can take a look at this essay or read the essay, I hope, because it is very descriptive. It goes into certain plot and thematic and character elements. Borzagi's treatment of this particular story material, and other wonderful, great, and well-stated insights. So this is the Dan Callahan essay that's included in the fold-out insert. So, my friends, this is Criterion's release of History is Made at Night. Once again, a wonderful, charming film that is many things at once, and it makes for a really overall lovely work of entertainment from director Frank Borzage. History is Made at Night. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.